It's been 7 years since we got married. When giving birth to our second child, a cesarean section was needed due to the baby's position. My husband, who originally said he would wait outside the delivery room, was nowhere to be found. I was bleeding heavily beneath me and mustered my last bit of strength to sign the surgery consent form. Finally, I successfully gave birth to a daughter. As I just woke up, I vaguely heard my husband on the phone. "Isabella, I had our daughter through Evelyn. My heart only holds you." Isabella is the person my husband has never been able to forget. Just coming out of a coma, I felt like I was in a dream. Suddenly, I realized that my 10-year relationship with Christopher seemed quite absurd. I woke up in pain. When my consciousness was hazy, I heard my husband Christopher on the phone with someone else. "That's great, Isabella. Evelyn endured 20 hours of hardship and finally gave birth to our daughter." Every word was simple, but put together, I felt shocked. I struggled to open my eyes and saw Christopher sitting in a chair next to the hospital bed, legs crossed, with a look of genuine emotion reminiscent of his youth. He said, "Isabella, even though I've been married to Evelyn for 7 years, the one I will always love is you." I endured the sharp pain in my stomach and slowly recalled what Christopher had said. Just yesterday, I risked my life to give birth to a daughter, only to find out she isn't my child at all. The process of conceiving this child was truly fraught with difficulties. I still remember, a year ago, I finally emerged from the grief of Debau's death and decided to have another child with Christopher. Christopher told me that his sperm motility was low and that we would need to use in vitro fertilization. I agreed without giving it much thought. After enduring several egg retrievals and the discomfort of surgery, I persevered. However, the test tube baby I cared for so dearly was always Christopher's. Secretly, the child he put in my belly was his with his white moonlight. "Isabella, are you okay? I'm coming right over." Christopher suddenly stood up, and the chair scraped loudly against the floor. I snapped back to reality and saw him hurriedly leaving. I felt a heaviness in my chest, and it was a bit painful. A sudden, fishy sweet taste surged up my throat, and I couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, my vision blurred by tears. I have been in a relationship with Christopher for 3 years, married for 7, and have given him 2 children. I always thought I was living a happy life, but it turns out it has all been a lie for the past 10 years. Just now, my husband unhesitatingly left me, still unconscious, to meet the woman he has been longing for. Ha ha ha. I smiled bitterly. The pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the heartache I feel at this moment. When the nurse saw I was awake and noticed the blood I had vomited on the sheets, she asked in surprise, "Evelyn, are you okay?" I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and replied, "I'm fine, I'm okay, I won't die." Looking at the result of Christopher and Isabella as a couple, I thought to myself, I haven't truly lived yet, how can I end it so easily? Seeing that I was mostly fine, the nurse hurriedly brought the baby to show me. "Evelyn, your daughter is really beautiful. She looks just like your husband." I took a closer look at the child. Her high nose and thin lips seemed to have inherited from Christopher, as if she was copied from him. Only those big, bright black eyes are completely different from mine as a mother. From morning to night, I really cried many times. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Christopher finally came back. He was holding a thermal container in one hand and typing on his phone with the other, looking like he had just fallen in love. He looked up, saw that I was awake, quickly put down his phone, and walked over with concern, saying, "Honey, you woke up and didn't tell me, you really worried me." His expression looked very sincere. For years ago, I couldn't accept the death of my eldest child, and my mood became very poor. I thought of extreme things. When I just woke up, I happened to see his eyes a bit red, and he said in a deep voice, "Honey, you finally woke up. If something happened to you, I wouldn't be able to live." Was he hiding it too deeply, or can one heart really accommodate 2 people at the same time? Seeing me silent, he seemed a bit anxious and asked if I was angry with him. Yesterday he stayed outside the ward with me, but he had to step out for a moment due to an urgent matter. As a result, Christopher hugged him. He said sorry, it was all his fault. He asked me if I was hungry and even brought my favorite black-bone chicken soup. Then, he carefully took out the soup and personally fed it to me. But I caught a strong scent of his perfume and turned my face away, feeling a bit uncomfortable. He seemed worried and asked, "Honey, what's wrong?" "Christopher, have you seen the second baby?" "Of course, I have. But why doesn't the second baby look like me at all?" A flash of panic crossed Christopher's face, but he quickly calmed down. He patted my head gently and said, "Silly, All newborn babies are wrinkly. How can you tell who they resemble? That's not very convincing. My feelings of grievance suddenly erupted, and I couldn't help but slap him, immediately feeling pain and breaking out in a cold sweat on the hospital bed. Christopher nervously asked, "Darling, what's wrong?" Then he sought help from the doctor, pleading, "Please save her. Evelyn, wake up quickly. Don't sleep anymore." There were some noisy sounds in my ears, and I fainted again. When I woke up again, it was already the next day. The nurse came to change my four and said enviously, "Evelyn, you have no idea. Your husband was so anxious last night. He said if you didn't pull through, none of us could sleep." Evelyn, you are so lucky. Lucky? But every time I wake up from a crisis, Christopher isn't by my side. Whenever he shows up, he always brings with him a strong scent of perfume that makes me feel very uncomfortable. I stayed in the hospital for 7 days, and finally my complexion improved. During those 7 days, Christopher visited me constantly, acting like a gentle and caring husband. On the 8th day, an unexpected person came to my hospital room. She was wearing a white dress, had a slender figure, skin as smooth as porcelain, and very beautiful features, a truly rare beauty. Especially those bright, big eyes, which look exactly like my daughter's. As she got closer, I smelled that strong yet familiar perfume on her. She must be Isabella. Are you Evelyn? Compared to me, Isabella is nothing special. She had a high and mighty demeanor and said to Lucas beside her, "Quick, call her aunt." Only then did I realize she was holding a little boy, about 4 years old, by the hand. He looked at me with eyes full of resentment, thinking to himself, how could I possibly call her aunt? She should be called the one who took my dad away. "Lucas!" Isabella angrily called out, hitting him and telling him not to talk nonsense, urging him to call Evelyn aunt. With tears streaming down his face, Lucas reluctantly walked up to me, gritting his teeth and said, "Aunt Evelyn." Only then did I notice his expression. For a moment, I was a bit surprised and felt a little uncomfortable. This boy named Lucas looks a bit like me. Seeing me staring at Lucas, Isabella appeared very pleased, perhaps thinking that after Evelyn lost her child, she wanted to get close to my son. She should think about what qualifications she has for that. If I hadn't married abroad back then, she would never have had the chance to become Christopher's wife. Her tone became increasingly mocking. After all, Brother Christopher didn't marry the one he loved, it was someone who didn't matter to him. Before marrying Christopher, I already knew he had someone special in his heart. He and that girl didn't stay together after graduation, and Isabella went abroad to study later. Christopher started pursuing me at that time. He pursued me for 3 years without ever giving up. Feeling his love, I eventually agreed to his proposal. A love that once moved me now seems really funny. Isabella keeps provoking, "Evelyn, you should have some self-awareness." At that moment, Christopher happily walked over with my daughter, who nearly lost her life in his arms. He approached Isabella and gently asked, "Isabella, what brings you here?" Isabella immediately put on a wronged expression, tears streaming down her face. "Christopher, I came here to see Sister Evelyn out of kindness, but she told me to take Lucas away, saying I shouldn't ruin your relationship." Although I didn't want to defend Christopher, I also didn't like being wronged, so I calmly replied, "I didn't." Lucas pointed at me and angrily said, "It's her. She's the one who said I have no status and wanted to drive me away." He stared at me with eyes very similar to mine. My heart felt like it was being torn in half. I really felt awful. Isabella is constantly urging Christopher, saying that it's all my fault and I shouldn't have come back. If you hadn't come to pick me up, Sister Evelyn wouldn't have almost faced a crisis during childbirth due to the lack of a signature. It's understandable that she holds a grudge against me. Christopher stood beside me holding our daughter, and there was a hint of dissatisfaction in his gaze. At that moment, I could hardly believe that the husband who always whispered sweet nothings in my ear was like this. I suddenly slammed the cup from the bedside table onto the floor, my voice hoarse. "Christopher, it was so dangerous on the day of childbirth, and you actually went to pick up that woman. Do you really think you deserve me?" Isabella was startled and screamed. Christopher's expression immediately turned grim. He hugged our daughter into Isabella's arms, gently patting her back to comfort her, and then he strode over to me. Without any hesitation, he slapped me. "Evelyn, look at your current state. It's really a bit out of control. I feel like it's not safe for our daughter to be with you. Let Isabella take care of her for now. She has more experience." A fish out of water must feel very uncomfortable, just like I do right now. A few days ago, I learned that the child I struggled to give birth to actually belongs to my husband and Isabella. And at this moment, my husband simply handed the child over to Isabella without a care. How can someone so close to me be so heartless? I turned my head and glanced at the smug Lucas, and a wave of sadness surged in my heart. Suddenly, a strange thought flashed through my mind. Despite the pain in my body, I rolled out of bed and grabbed Lucas by the hair. Lucas cried out in pain, and Isabella shouted, "Evelyn, what are you doing?" Christopher angrily pushed me away and said, "Evelyn, you really act like a madwoman." He left with his daughter Isabella in his arms, holding Lucas with one hand, the four of them closely together, looking like a very happy family. But I felt like the annoying character ruining someone else's happiness. I looked at the 2 strands of hair in my hand, lifted my head, and tried hard not to let the tears fall. 3 hours later, I received the urgent identification report and Isabella's information. The report showed that the mother-son relationship between Lucas and me was confirmed. I felt like I was suffocating, desperately gasping for air before slowly coming back to my senses. It turns out that 4 years ago, Christopher lied to me saying that my newborn child had died, when in fact he gave the child to Isabella. Because Isabella cannot have children. I held that identification report tightly, my hands were already bleeding, but I didn't feel a thing. My hands were shaking. I took out my phone and made a call. "Senior, help me." On the day I was discharged, Christopher sent a text saying he would come to pick me up and asked me to wait for him at the door. I always listened to him before, obediently doing as he said. But now, I no longer want to do that. It's no longer necessary. Christopher, you just need to take good care of Isabella. Christopher immediately called, "Evelyn, what are you talking about? I have nothing to do with Isabella. She is alone now. Isn't it right for me to take care of them?" Even now, Christopher is still not telling the truth. "Christopher, let's get a divorce." I thought he would be happy because I had suffered a lot during this time, giving birth to 2 children, all for Isabella. Unexpectedly, the next second, Christopher shouted angrily, "Evelyn, who told you to mention divorce? If you want a divorce, either you die or I die." Christopher hung up the phone directly. Not long after, his Maybach stopped at the hospital entrance, but getting out were Isabella and a dog. Isabella walked confidently towards me. She mocked, "Evelyn, are you still waiting for my husband?" It was truly humiliating. These past few days, Christopher has been generously taking care of me at the hospital, and many people know we are a couple. And Isabella said some things that sparked a lot of thoughts and speculation. Could this woman named Evelyn really be the mistress? Indeed, look, she just got out of Christopher's car, and his wife is the legitimate one. The wife is holding the dog. Isn't that implying that Evelyn is an unworthy dog? The accusations around me grew louder, and some people angrily approached and slapped me, saying I deserved to die in the hospital. Then someone started splashing water on me and throwing garbage at me, leaving me dirty and soaking wet. At that moment, Isabella walked up to me. She leaned close to my ear and triumphantly said, "Evelyn, you're really not even as good as a dog. Do you know? Brother Christopher is in the car. He's watching how you're being humiliated." At that moment, Christopher sent a text message. "Evelyn, if you beg me not to divorce, I will come to help you." I don't understand why Christopher is so eager to maintain our marriage. When we first got married, I found out he was still in contact with his ex-girlfriend, and I made a fuss about wanting a divorce. Later, I even fainted from anger because I refused to eat. Christopher dropped his important work to drive 100 kilometers to the hospital, and as a result, he got into a car accident because he was driving too fast, almost losing his life. When he woke up, he saw me by his side, held my hand, and said, "Evelyn, I don't want a divorce unless I die." At that moment, I believed he loved me deeply. So, I stopped being willful. I prioritized him in everything, and as a result, my 7-year marriage turned me into a joke. I called Christopher and coldly said, "Even if I die, I don't want to be with you." After saying that, I hung up the phone. Then, in front of Christopher, I ran without hesitation into the sea in front of the hospital. As I sank into the water, I saw Christopher running towards me like he had lost his mind. I saw Christopher originally wanting to jump in to save me, but he was stopped by Isabella. Just as I expected, he can't let go of the white moonlight, yet he also can't forget the vermilion mole. I didn't stop. quickly swimming to the other side. We fished for a full 14 hours. The night was very dark. The recovery team leader said wearily, "Christopher, because the water flow was too strong yesterday and this area is very large, we still haven't found your wife's body. I'm afraid." Before he could finish, Christopher felt dizzy, staggered a few steps, barely steadied himself, and grabbed the recovery team leader's hand, saying, "The body? Impossible. Keep searching. Whoever can find my wife, I'll give him 100 million. Isabella looked at Christopher worriedly and said, "Christopher, you've been standing since yesterday, without eating or drinking. If this continues, you won't be able to handle it. Let's go back for now." But Christopher firmly said, "No, I must find Evelyn." In the end, Christopher fainted from exhaustion. As soon as he woke up, he received a call from the funeral home. The caller said, "Hello. Your wife Evelyn's body has been found. Please come to the funeral home to process the cremation procedures." Christopher's hands trembled uncontrollably, his face filled with helplessness as he muttered to himself, "It's impossible. She can't be dead. She won't leave me." But in the next moment, he lost consciousness again. In the funeral home, "Evelyn, are you really going to do this?" Facing the elegant senior in front of me, I nodded, thinking that this choice is also a farewell to my past self. Since Christopher doesn't want a divorce, then so be it. I can only escape by pretending to be dead. I understand his betrayal. I don't want that family, nor the son and daughter. After Christopher woke up, he rushed to the funeral home, just in time to find my body about to be cremated, and he desperately tried to stop it all. I signaled for him to wait a moment, and the staff stopped. He trembled as he lifted the white cloth, and when he saw the birthmark on my neck, he suddenly crouched down, tears welling in his eyes. The senior comforted me. "It seems he cares about you a lot." I smiled gently, "But what good is concern? He may have loved me once, but he still can't let go of someone else. I find such feelings very unclean. However, he needs to spend more time being good to me, so that when he loses me, he can feel that torment in front of my ashes." To witness that moment, I fully armed myself and personally handed my ashes to Christopher. He knelt on the ground, his eyes hollow, as if he had lost his soul, repeatedly muttering, "Impossible, impossible." I deliberately lowered my voice, put on a mask, and comforted him, saying, "Christopher, life is unpredictable. Please take care." Later, I heard that Christopher knelt at the temple, holding my ashes and praying for 7 days and nights. Although Isabella was very angry, she seemed very fragile when she saw Christopher. "Christopher, you can't keep neglecting yourself like this. I'm still here for you." This time, Christopher surprisingly did not listen to Isabella. Her crying was heartbreaking, her voice choked. "Even if you want me to leave, I can't bear to see you so depressed. What if your body can't take it? I'm the only one who worries about you." Seeing Christopher wavering a bit, she continued, "Sister Evelyn left you twins. Don't you want to take care of your own children? Lucas is Sister Evelyn's child." Mentioning Lucas made Christopher's emotions become even more uncontrollable. He pushed Isabella away like he had gone mad and then slapped himself hard. "Evelyn, I was wrong. If you knew Lucas was your child who died young, you definitely wouldn't have left me, right?" Christopher recalled the mistakes he had made. He cruelly slapped himself a few more times. It felt as if she had deep feelings for me. However, this late-arriving affection is worth less than grass. During my hospital stay, I had someone help me organize my things. During that time, Christopher was busy taking care of Isabella, so he didn't pay attention. When he returned home and found that he couldn't locate anything I left behind, he finally understood that I had really left. In the evening, Isabella rarely cooked, but today she made a feast for him. "Christopher, come eat this crab. I specially picked the biggest one." As she spoke, she placed 2 crabs into Christopher's bowl and playfully said, "You have one, I have one. I know I don't like to peel crabs, so I'm counting on you, brother Christopher." Christopher felt a bit confused, recalling the time he had eaten crabs with me. "Honey, even though I like crabs, you're allergic. So could you please not buy them next time? And you don't like peeling crabs either. Your hands always get hurt when I ask you to do it, which really makes me angry." Isabella saw Christopher in a daze and urged him, "Hurry up and peel it. I'm waiting to eat." Christopher smiled bitterly and said nothing, just concentrating on peeling the crab. Sure enough, His fingers were bleeding. "Oh, Christopher, how can you be so careless?" Isabella handed Christopher a tissue to wipe his bleeding finger while she was eating. Christopher recalled the scene where he nervously went to get the first aid kit to disinfect and put a band-aid on when he saw his finger bleeding before. "I'm not hungry, you go ahead and eat." Feeling a bit disappointed, he looked somewhat lonely as he left. That night, their daughter cried again. Isabella was a bit impatient, but after all, she was her daughter, so she had to comfort her. As a result, the daughter's cries grew louder. She angrily said, "All you do is cry. It's like you were born from Evelyn's belly." In her daze, she didn't notice that Christopher outside the door was silently watching, his eyes filled with heaviness. Isabella hurriedly explained, "Christopher, I'm really just exhausted. That's why I said those nonsense things. Please don't take it to heart." Christopher, perhaps a bit impatient due to his daughter's noise, frowned and said, "Then why don't you just move out?" Isabella was taken aback. "Christopher, you actually want me to leave? You would never do that. Do you really think that way? Is it all her?" Christopher seemed to be thinking, then at the moment Isabella shouted that she had a headache, he nervously and guilt-ridden pulled her into his arms. "Christopher, think about it carefully. If it weren't for me being forced into a marriage abroad, Evelyn wouldn't have appeared. And since I can't have children, if I want a child, you should send your son over to keep me company. You should only have me in your heart." After Isabella finished speaking, she tried to kiss Christopher's cheek. Christopher seemed to realize something in an instant, then pushed Isabella down to the ground. "With the arrangement of my senior, I found a job in jewelry design. After a month of hard work, I finally gained my senior's recognition. He said to me, 'Evelyn, you are already very professional now. If you don't want to stay in this city, I can help you apply for an opportunity in Paris.'" "Paris? That's great. Really? Just in time. I want to see the outside world. In the first half of my life, I spent all my energy on a person who wasn't worth it. Now I've decided to live for myself." The senior helped me secure a spot for a month later. "It's very cold in Paris right now. I need to buy some warm clothes." As soon as I arrived at the mall, I ran into Christopher and Isabella, and quickly hid to the side. After they left, I came out, only to realize the car windows were transparent. Christopher looked at me with intense eyes, which caught Isabella's attention as well. She reacted quickly and immediately blocked my view with her body. I told Christopher I had a bit of a headache and asked the driver to go faster. The intense gaze disappeared, and I was happy because I hadn't been shopping in a long time. "Is it really you? Haven't you already left?" You called me from behind, and although I was very nervous, I relaxed the next moment. "What's going on? Looking at you now, you aren't still worried that a deceased person will steal your benefactor, are you?" "I don't need this position. Feel free to take it." Isabella's face immediately showed displeasure, as if she was about to hit me. I quickly raised my hand to block it and shot back a retort. "Don't think I don't know what you did back then. If he can't see it, how could I not understand it? Also, I'm not interested in that person, so just pretend you never saw me." Seeing me turn to leave, she seemed a bit incredulous and asked, "Are you sure he won't find out?" Regarding that question, I just smiled and left without answering. "I'm about to leave the city. I only came to buy some things today, and he can't possibly see me." As I was leaving, Isabella showed a cold smile. Only those truly dead wouldn't appear in front of him. As soon as I arrived at the underground parking lot, I felt like someone was behind me, so I quickened my pace towards my car. But just as I opened the car door, I smelled a pungent odor. When I woke up, I found my hands and feet tied with ropes. I had been kidnapped. I thought to myself, the most likely culprit is Isabella. She's really ruthless, and it seems she's not doing well with Christopher either. Hearing footsteps at the door, I decided to pretend I was still asleep. A chill swept over me as Isabella suddenly splashed a bucket of cold water on me, making me shiver. She tightly grasped my chin and gritted her teeth, saying, "How could you possibly make Brother Christopher unforgettable? Only the dead will remain completely silent." My heart tightened. How dare she think of taking action against me? I wasn't sure if the emergency rescue I pressed in the parking lot was effective. "Calm down. If he really cared about me, he would have come to find me long ago. No need to wait until now. He simply doesn't want to find me. Besides, when I was bleeding heavily and on the verge of death, he immediately went abroad to look for you. How could he possibly care about me?" Isabella's expression changed slightly, and I tried to continue persuading her. "I jumped into the sea in front of him. He knew you were pretending to be injured. yet he ignored me completely. His heart only loves you. I tried desperately to explain, but still couldn't convince the somewhat crazy Isabella. You're right, Christopher only loves me, but you still have to face the consequences. Why do you make me uncomfortable and take away my time with Christopher? I felt a chill, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. It's useless to pretend everything is fine. Do I really have to experience true despair? At the moment Isabella plunged the knife into my heart, I trembled and closed my eyes. Isabella, how could you do this? Christopher's voice echoed in my ears. It turned out I was not dead yet. As I opened my eyes, Christopher was right in front of me, catching Isabella's strike. I instinctively wanted to help him stop the bleeding, but I didn't notice that his eyes were all on me. Christopher, I really didn't mean to. Isabella was trembling beside me. I called 120. It will definitely be fine. Outside the emergency room, Isabella looked dazed, repeatedly whispering that it would be fine, it would definitely be fine. This is really asking for trouble. The patient was saved. Fortunately, we got him here in time. If it had been any later, I might have been powerless. The doctor's words weighed heavily on me. He saved my life through his efforts. However, I don't feel like I owe him anything. When I had my C-section, I lost a lot of blood and almost died. I've let that go. Since I feel fine now, I should leave. After getting home, I took out my phone to message my senior, asking if I could apply for an earlier time. I've tried my best. It won't be long, at most a week. My anxious heart finally relaxed. It's better for me to leave this place early. When Christopher woke up and didn't see me, it was like he lost his appetite. I know I acted impulsively. Please don't skip meals. I really know I was wrong. Was I wrong? If I had been a second later, it would have been Evelyn lying there. Christopher's angry gaze could scare Isabella to death. I thought to myself, I really shouldn't have brought you back. It's better to leave quickly while I haven't changed my mind. Otherwise, don't blame me for being heartless. Isabella finds it hard to accept Christopher's changes. Clearly, his previous principles could be changed for her. But she can only leave reluctantly. Otherwise, all that awaits her is trouble. My phone started ringing incessantly again. Evelyn, where are you? I know you're avoiding me. It was my fault before. Can you please not leave me? As long as you can come back, I'm willing to do anything, even give up everything. Seeing those messages, I felt no emotion at all. All of this has long ceased to matter to me. The phone rang. It was my old friend. Once connected, he urgently said, Evelyn, please save Christopher. He hasn't eaten or drunk anything in the hospital these past few days, and the doctor said if this continues, the life they just saved might be at risk. Then just go take him out for a meal. What do you need me for? The other party still didn't give up, saying Christopher would starve to death if I didn't forgive him. Seeing that I hesitated, my old friend began to play the emotional card. If there's really no other way, could you please help me make a bowl of porridge? Please, Evelyn. I know he's not great, but I really don't want to see him get into trouble. With no other choice, I ordered takeout and had a bowl of porridge delivered to the hospital. After the porridge was ready, I left. My old friend hurriedly stopped me, saying, since you're here, why not go in and see him? I suddenly got angry, thinking this is it. I owe him nothing anymore. My old friend understood my reaction and tactfully walked away. Before leaving, I heard Christopher happily say, she's here? I thought to myself that I must finish my meal. That's right, she's here, and she also said that if you don't take your illness seriously, she won't come again. Christopher started messaging me on time every day again, sharing his life and his regrets about my loss. But he doesn't know that what is lost, and there's no turning back. No matter how you piece together a broken mirror, it will never return to its original form. It will only leave behind an incomplete reflection. I gave a wry smile and bought a ticket to Paris. If two people truly loved each other for a long time, how could there be such an outcome? Before leaving, I sent Christopher one last message. Love and hate are like a fleeting moment, hard to achieve completeness. After taking out my SIM card, I got into a taxi to the airport. Just as I was about to close my eyes to rest, the driver's words startled me. There's been an accident ahead. We can't go forward now, and we can't go back either. Miss, are you in a hurry? If you're not in a hurry, Please wait a moment. If you are, it's best to cross this traffic light and take a taxi on the other side. I looked at the time, decided to get out, and thanked the driver. The scene of the car accident at the intersection looks terrible. There was a chain collision, and one car is still on fire. I quickly left the accident scene and walked towards the intersection in the distance. Just as I reached the other side of the road, I saw one of the accident cars seemingly out of control, coming straight at me. I was so scared that I froze. My feet felt like they were weighed down and I couldn't move. When I saw the driver, I realized this wasn't an accident, it was intentional. It's Isabella! In this emergency, I hurried to the flower bed in the middle of the road, hoping it would block Isabella and prevent her from charging at me so quickly. Evelyn, run away. I vaguely heard that voice as Christopher's car charged at Isabella without hesitation. That luxury car was indeed sturdy. Although it flipped Isabella's car, Christopher's car only deployed the airbags. He was bleeding from his forehead, stumbling towards me. Evelyn, are you okay? Looking at the anxious Christopher, I felt surprisingly calm inside. If it weren't for you, would I have continued to suffer at Isabella's hands? Do you think I would be moved to tears? You got it wrong. I will only hate you more. Christopher lost control for a moment. Evelyn, this won't happen again. I will make Isabella pay, and I won't let her have a chance to hurt you again. It's really ridiculous. Next time? What was she even doing during the last incident? What can I expect from someone who didn't even call the police while lying half dead in bed? In the end, it was just a joke. Seeing that I was unmoved, Christopher suddenly knelt down. Wife, I'm begging you, please forgive me. I really don't want to do this anymore. Then his eyes lit up, looking at me excitedly, as if he had found hope. Yeah, our daughter is still waiting for us to come home. Let's go home, okay? We can't let our child lose her mother, can we? Evelyn! I pulled his hand off my clothes, giving a cold smile. Child? Are you really sure this child is mine? Christopher sat down on the ground. Do you already know? Then he held on to a glimmer of hope. Son, do you remember the child who passed away before? He is actually not dead. I'm not joking. So what? You gave your son to Isabella, so he is no longer my son. Christopher's last hope was shattered, and I turned to leave. Evelyn, don't push me. When I turned my head, I found Christopher holding a shard of glass against my neck. I have become so humble for you, putting Isabella's life in danger. What more do you want from me? Seeing the police and the ambulance behind us, I tried to calm Christopher down. Put the thing down first and then we can talk. Christopher was particularly agitated. He said that as soon as I put it down, I would leave. I slowly moved my feet, trying to distract him. If you don't listen, then there's no point in me staying here. Hearing stay, Christopher became particularly excited, and the shard moved slightly away from my neck. The police behind quickly subdued Christopher upon seeing the scene. Seeing this situation, I checked the time and then confidently walked towards the flight to Paris. Although the relationship has already broken, even if you threaten me with your life, it won't help. The world I long for is truly beautiful, and it makes me feel particularly good. Living the life I want, doing what I excel at, eating the food I love, simplicity and tranquility are what truly matter. After buying my favorite cola and fried chicken, I turned on the TV. The famous entrepreneur Christopher aged overnight because of love. In a serious car accident, a woman named Isabella lost her life, which is very heartbreaking. The passion and fervor in life do not suit me. It feels like a broken love. The ideal life can only be achieved through my own efforts. Making money and having the right skills are the most important. Rely on others? Sometimes I suddenly think, if one day I disappear somewhere, I actually have no idea what would happen. I love life and yearn for love. I will pamper myself even more.